at Autodesk, we have our safe harbor slide. So I'll just move on from that. How's the lag? Is that okay?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That was good on my end.
Okay. Okay. So I'll just do a quick who am I? So I've actually been in the game for over 25 years. Started CAD back in '96. My student days, there was no Revit, so did a little bit of work with AutoCAD and our 3ds Max platform. I'm actually originally from New Zealand, or New Zealand, if you've ever been over to that part of the world, where I got to design luxury accommodation up in the North Island. And most of my career was actually working in the UK. So I actually worked for a company called R&JM Architects. This was an early project I designed, inspired by architects Neil Denari. This is a Sheffield project. It's a library. And I was actually a skateboarder back in my day and subconsciously designed the steps and the rails so the local Sheffield skateboarding group could abuse my architecture. My first foray into building information modeling was on the University of Cambridge. This is a medical research council building that we did, heavily serviced, hence why we have these stainless steel shingle clad towers with the extractors housed on the side. When we did this was in the early days of Revit. We actually started this one in Autodesk Architectural Desktop. If anybody's used that, I think it's now called Autodesk Architecture. The platform was a little bit different, and we worked with an American engineering group which were modeling all the mechanical ductwork, and there was the traditional ductwork which was going to be housed on top of the roof, but they provided us with an option to house it on the side of the building, which created these interesting wings to actually break up the linearity of the project. What happened when it got actually to the final construction documentation is the contractor, BAM, rebuilt the whole thing in Revit. And this is a quick video just showing the detail because it's a heavily serviced laboratory. All of the components are actually modeled for mechanical and electrical, so they can use that for facilities management. This video we showed a few years back. This was just showing some of the displaced parts that you can do in Revit to better show the assembly of the laboratory tables here. I also worked for HOK for a short period of time. One building that I did the conceptual design on was the Baku Flaming Towers. Got handed over to another team who developed this in Revit. And at the same time, when I was a bid manager at HOK in London, there was still the crossover between Revit and ADT, and then linking it into the older 3D Studio Viz platform. Before leaving the UK, I was fortunate enough to work on a design for manufacturing and assembly project. This is a large, complex healthcare project in Brighton. This is the south coast of the UK. And we're working with Laing O'Rourke contractors where the components here, the precast concrete panels, were actually modeled all in Revit. This is back in 2010, where we didn't have divided parts or the concrete add-in. We actually hosted these within a curtain wall, and each one of these panels, they're exported as an IFC, and then Laing O'Rourke used them to fabricate these panels for assembly on site. I'm also very passionate about sustainable design. I've done some competitions in the UK. My claim to fame at Autodesk is I got to design the sample house. So every time you open the product, you'll see the sample house. This is the original design, so a little bit different from the one that ships with the product. But yeah, fortunate enough to be able to be creative. And I'm a regular speaker at the Autodesk University events. I did a formal one a number of years ago, InfoWorks for Architects. We did like a thing remodeling Sydney, a VR one in 2017. And then the last one before the lockdowns was with Willow. We were doing some digital twins workflows on Forge. During the lockdown, I had a bit more time to be working from home, so I was involved in doing some pro bono projects. This is in Ghana, designing an eco-city. The building was all designed to be made out of composite bamboo blocks. So it was looking at the embodied carbon and then using local materials to build. And then this one last year was an orbital farm, and this is in New Mexico. Up here on the left, this is the Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic Spaceport. Original design here, this is from Foster and Partners, and we picked it up to develop it. The concept is that you can use photovoltaics to harness the sun. This will power the robots, which will harvest the leafy green vegetables here, and it's all aligned so you're getting the max amount of sun during the day. In the center, this tower actually captures condensation. The condensation drops down, and there's a fish tank in the bottom, and the nutrients from the fish tank help irrigate the leafy vegetables which the robots harvest. So pretty cool project to be involved in. Okay, so I won't go into this full presentation. That was just a quick intro. And today, this presentation will be on conceptual design, focusing on Formit. And if you do have any questions, feel free to drop me a note. My email's there. I decided not to show something that I would typically do. I thought, well, let's try and do something that's local to you guys. And I found this building in Charlottesville, and I thought this would be kind of a cool one to model in Formit. I'll keep this loose, so if you do have any questions, please reach out. Just feel free to ask. And I'll try and jump between the platform, but I just want to try and do the overview first and then come back and show some of the pics and clicks. One of the things that I got hit with yesterday was Bing Maps went down and I couldn't fully use the tool. But I wanted to show some of the tools that you can use that we've been adding to Formit to create 3D context. This is part of the APIs, the plugins. So you can load in numerous plugins, or you can build your own. This one that I thought was quite cool. It allows you to choose a location and build the city. So with the tool here, I have in Formit, and I'm just going to try and move my controls out the way. This is always the challenge of doing stuff remotely as you get the tools in the way of the product. So what we have here is, I'll just turn off some bits and pieces. We actually have the site buildings and the satellite image showing up, and let's just say turn off the terrain. So this is the satellite image that I've pulled down for this particular site, and it's going to be jumping around a little bit on me. And I did do this a lot bigger, but I just wanted to reduce it just to give me a bit of context. The tool we have to capture all of this is up here. This is the location setting. It is powered by Bing Maps. So I had a little bit of a challenge yesterday, but basically with this tool, you can pick a location anywhere in the world. This little red dot just shows the location of your site. So I'm just centering on the site. And you can pull down a lot of info here. One thing to note is that if you go to do a much larger site, it won't be as detailed, or won't be as fine-tuned in terms of the aerial overlay. So make sure you're sort of choosing a smaller amount, but you can pull down a lot of information. So you can pull down satellite image and terrain, or you can just set the location only if you don't use that information. What you'll find here is when you turn on the terrain, this is OSM data, and so OpenStreetMap's data is kind of okay. but it's not really as accurate as what you want to be using. So it does put that automatically on a layer when you're pulling down site information. The other tool we have here for building the context, so as I'm just panning down the list here, this is the 3D context creator, and you can go up to 1,000 square meters, and it's referencing our northings and eastings, our longitude and latitude. Now, I won't do this live just because if I go and do it, it'll take a few minutes, but you can pull down a lot of information here. And here is the data I got from that 1,000 square meter block. Now, what did happen was I actually jumped into Spacemaker, one of our new platforms, because Bing Maps wasn't working in Formit yesterday. But what I wanted to do is just show that if you are creating sites or wanting to connect it to other platforms, Formit does export numerous file formats. So if you want to import or export SketchUp files, it will do that. OBJ is one of the key ones that works with our new Spacemaker tool. And so I did the same thing. I created a site in Spacemaker, and I was just going through the process of looking at the OSM data here. This is what it creates for the site. So you get street information, you get the aerial map, you get the OSM data for the building, just kind of okay, and the aerial information. We are adding more and more features to this tool, like realistic sky and building outlines. What I was doing here was looking at how I could combine the Formit data in the Spacemaker model. So this here on the right is actually the Formit data that pulled it down from the from this 3D context creator. It actually did probably a better job than what the Spacemaker tool was pulling down from OSM. And this is a whole nother session on Spacemaker, which we could do maybe at another time. But at the moment, it's geared up for Northern Europe because of its origins out of Norway, out of Oslo. So it's all about the databases, like how can you bring in other data to use in these platforms to create your site context. Here, there's some new tools that are allowing you to optimize the data before bringing it in. So I thought what was kind of cool here is this Formit data that I'm bringing into Spacemaker actually starts to break down the levels as well. So you can set a story height, you can split that model, you can simplify the model as well. So if you want to, crunch some of those vertices, you can do that. There's tools here to help you optimize the data that you're bringing into the Spacemaker platform. Now, one of the challenges, though, that we have is aligning those databases, because at the moment we don't have all the world coordinate systems inputted into the program yet, and we're going to be accelerating that, but it's just not there yet. And for me, being down in Australia, we use the map grid of Australia, and there's a whole northern and eastern system to get familiar with. You can find some workarounds to do this. One of the tools that I prefer to use is 3ds Max. This is a tool that's in your in the AC collection. So if you do have a collection, one of the workarounds I was looking at is exporting terrain data out of Spacemaker, bringing in the Formit data and the Spacemaker data into 3ds Max, and then aligning the information together in the X, Y, and Z values. So these are some workarounds. It can get a little bit complex, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody. Yep.
I think we have a question. I was trying to find the right moment to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted some clarification in terms of the OSM files that you were importing through Formit versus Spacemaker. Does the Formit kind of 3D create or site generator still extract information from OpenStreetMaps? If so, why is it different on both platforms?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly how each platform reads the data, and one example of this, and I'll just show you something that is Formit related. and I'll just go forward a little bit. We have a connection of Formit in Lumion, and I didn't have time to prepare this yesterday, but I have done this for the for a site in Singapore. Lumion have a beta version of an OSM connector to create a site, and this is what you can do in Lumion, and you can link Formit into the Lumion environment for visualization. Their tool does up to 2,000 square meters. So you can bring in a bigger site, but it's reading OSM data, but you can see the data here is really sharp. You can't export it out, box that, but their data seems to be better. I don't know why their data is better, because it says that it is pulling it from OpenStreetMaps. Our tools are pulling it from OpenStreetMaps as well.
Yeah,
but I don't have the answer for that, even
I'd be
in
curious.
works.
We have been testing early pilots for Autodesk in terms of Spacemaker to give feedbacks and stuff like that. And we ended up kind of staying away from OSM and trying to bring in GIS data
Yeah.
to help mitigate some of this stuff. But thank you.
Yeah, and so that's a challenge. Like because I work in the APAC region, we don't have the database available for the platform yet, because it's still very new to Autodesk. So my workaround here was to actually bring in data from another source, and I can load this into Spacemaker. So here's Singapore. Now I have optimized the files a little bit because this is a cloud-hosted platform, but you can get in a decent amount of detail that's acceptable to use in the platform, and you can start to see different features in real time. And this is the tools that we have to start designing your buildings, and then like an LOD type environment, you can manipulate all this. You can test and analyze sun and noise. There's a wind wake tool. This is, again, it's new. In beta, this connects to Revit, and I'll maybe show some of that at the end. But there's a lot of really cool things happening here, and I've got something set up for Charlottesville as well, where I've actually been able to bring in assets from Formit to host them in a Spacemaker site. So I'll come back to that, but yeah, it's always going to be that the challenge is, where do you get the data from? How do you align it? How do you work with real-world coordinates? Here we have the challenges that Australia is divided up into several different states, not 50, but I think we've got about 6. The coordinate systems change in various states. Like over in Western Australia, they've just updated it to a 2020 coordinate system, whereas the east coast of Australia is working to what's called a GDA 94 system. So a lot of complexities there, and it's always good to work with a surveyor or a civil engineer to understand what's the right coordinate system for setting up these type of city projects. This is just what I built in Formit. So back to Formit, and I sort of went off into a bit of Spacemaker. Just wanted to show some of the newer tools coming through here. But you can do up to 1,000 square meters of that site, and then have that big map aerial image in the background. What I try and do is I try and color code everything, and I'll jump to materials in a second, but materials are really simple. You just, create a color or material you want. You can bring in your own textures, bump maps or cutouts like for alpha channels, and you can adjust the horizontal or vertical scales like a UVW map, and then add different types of reflections and gloss to make them look nice and shiny, and apply them to any bit of geometry in the model. What I did do though is just to note here, if you want to have that nice crisp image like you would in Google, you don't want to be pulling down the whole site. You want to get a bit closer and actually have just a smaller site, and then you'll start to get a bit more fidelity in your aerial image here. What I wanted to do for this one, so this is by architecture firm, and I don't know if anybody from the group works for that company, but I just saw this building was a new building. I thought this would be quite a good example to try and replicate in Formit. This is some other things you can do to increase the detail on the site. If you're familiar with the Revit kid, he is increasing his YouTube presence with a site called BIM After Dark. If you go and check out this Google 3D Earth trick, he shows how you can use Autodesk Recap Pro to capture site information and then export it out for use in Revit or in Formit or Spacemaker. Basically, the workflow, it's an interesting workflow because if you've ever used Recap or photogrammetry or point clouds, photogrammetry is essentially drone footage of a building. It's capturing photographs and stitching them together and using intelligence to look at the images and then triangulate them together. And then if it's a not too sunny day, it will start to create a 3D model for you. So with Recap Pro, you get Recap Photo. You could take up to, I think it's up to 1,000 photos. There may be a limitation on that, but you can take these photos, you pan around this in Google Earth, you record the screen, the video can be extracted via Adobe Premiere into separate photos, like 400 photos. You upload them to Recap Pro and it will create a 3D model for you. And I just screen grabbed this one shot. There's numerous different file formats you can export out. So again, if you're wanting to add more detail around the site, this is a really cool video workflow to check out. And again, part of the Autodesk AEC collection, you get Autodesk Recap Pro to do this. The only caveat here is it will consume cloud credits, so just check the consumption of your cloud credits before committing to the conversion. Okay, so quick start, massing modeling. It's simple, it's very intuitive. This one was just looking at, massing up the site and grouping them. So back in the actual tool here, I'll just move my screen controls out the way a little bit. Typically when you go and model things, you'll want to try and put them on layers. I've been pretty lazy about putting stuff on layers, but it just helps you monitor all the information. Let me just turn off these ones, side buildings. Typical rule of thumb is you can use these modeling tools up here. I prefer the pencil tool. It is just point and shoot. Oh yeah, and the units, I work in metric, but by default it will work to imperial here. In the background, there are more settings for you to look at here. So your shortcuts, if you like to use hotkeys, won't talk about Revit just yet. Material locations, I'm actually pointing my materials to my 3ds Max database, but you could point it to your Revit database. Dynamo, which we'll get into, you can add like a Dynamo library location. So if you've got someone in your company who uses Dynamo and has a whole lot of scripts you want to use in Formit, you can do that. And then content library as well. You can reuse all your Revit families here to be loaded into Formit as well. So just a couple of things in the back end. But it is a very intuitive tool. So it's just point and shoot, and you can basically type in the sizes you want. It gives you the little highlight for the XYZ gizmos, and as you go to finish up the command, it will show you it closing. So here we have our 2D component, and then we just extrude it up. And again, I'm working in meters, but it's as simple as that. And then with that selected, I would double click and then hit G to group it. That just helps preventing solids merging into each other and just helps with better management. So what I have for each one of these is they're just grouped objects, and that just helps me better manage the model. When you go to double click, of course, the group opens up, and you can grab edges and then move them down. And again, I just need to make sure I'm doing this slowly and doing it following the Z axis here. So maybe I want to slope that down, say 3 meters. I can do that. I can also go and grab points, and I can bring that point up, say 3 meters, if I want to do something a bit more interesting with that shape. So simple modeling tools. There are a few more advanced modeling tools here. So there's a couple of Boolean and join operations. If you've used sweeps, I think we were talking about landscape architecture here before. If you wanted to do a curb, for example, it could be like a square with a chamfered edge. You could draw a spline and then sweep that curve along the spline. Tools here to close up edges. So let's say I've deleted that face, for example. I could go and use this tool, and it will ask me to select the edge to be enclosed. So you're just delineating over the top of that, and then you finish the command, and that will clean that up again. In fact, it's done a little bit of a different type of a junction here. You also have a lofting tool. So if you ever wanted to do something interesting, like maybe you've got a twisting tower or something, and the floor plates are twisting, or you want to be more organic, you could loft options, and you can do offsets of solids. So if you want to create internal parts for the walls, you can offset it maybe 200 mil, 300 mil. You can shell objects, and then there's a nice little one for doing fillets as well if you want to chamfer everything, because there are no corners in real life. So if you want to get really accurate, you can do that. Typical tools for grouping. Again, if you go and right-click, you'll find the tools available here. We also have mirror tools, copy, of course you can go Control-C, Control-V, array, non-uniform scales, rotate, and delete. And a little one that we just added here, if you want to have 3D text, this is actually a Dynamo tool. So I could do 3D text on the building here. And this is actually a Dynamo script. So it's simple, it's easy to use. So I'll start rugs, and we have some embedded fonts available here. So again, maybe not all the fonts, but probably some decent amount of fonts, and you can use this to increase, decrease, extrude the scripts. If you want to customize the Dynamo scripts, you can also edit the embedded graph, and this will fire up Dynamo. So the whole idea is that we're making this easy for someone to leverage the Dynamo script inside of Formit, but you don't have to be a Dynamo expert. Here, when we go to the actual script, there's a bit going on, a lot of nodes and wires here. Now you could, work with a partner of Autodesk, or someone in your company who might be, doing this a lot of the time, and they could customize these type of scripts for your business. Here we just have, just so you can see what's going on, this is the nodes and wires, and then you have the actual 3D text. So you can start to see the actual result of that script working inside of Dynamo. But I'll move out of Dynamo for a second. So these are all the simple tools. Couple of things to look at. We do have a shadow and sun editor, so you can turn on your shadows and your sun editor here and start to see the azimuth and altitude of the sun. So that will be showing for you. And we do have a solar analysis tool. Now, this is actually leveraging the weather station. Now, this is telling me that this isn't available, and this is because I set this up using Bing Maps yesterday, which wasn't available for me. I think it might have been just down because of my location in the world. It has an option to look at the range for a certain time of the year. So, summertime for you guys, but maybe you want to look at the sun in January. You can do that. or you can look at it for the entire year. So if I just do just for that month, you can choose the entire project if you want, and it will do the entire project, or you can just choose certain faces. So I'll just grab those two and go analyze, and this will now give us some information on the wattage per square meter or per square feet, and it has picked up the location of this being on West Main Street. And when you hover over it, it will start to tell you more information about how much wattage is going to generate, wattage per hour. So nice little simple tools like that to give you some quick feedback on your conceptual model. And when I go out of that, that is gone. I won't get too much into this one. This is the Insight tool. This is more for doing basic conceptual options with some of the components in the model. This probably works a bit better in Revit. I wouldn't necessarily use this one in Formit. You can test it, but I think the Insight tool works better with the Revit environment. Okay, I'll just pause. Any questions at the moment? Okay, so yeah, I've gone through basic modelings, some of the tools you can use to get into a bit more detail. And so what I did with modelling up this building is...
I just had one comment in terms of the Dynamo you just showed. I know Dynamo for Formit has a little bit of a different nodes to push geometry versus Revit. So whoever is using Dynamo on a Revit side, just keep that in mind.
Yes, yeah, good point. So yeah, when we do go into Dynamo here, and I want to use one of these tools, you'll notice when we fire up the Dynamo engine that it will show Formit information. So it is, yeah, you can't use the same scripts inside of Formit as you can inside of Revit. Quick tools we have here. I'll just use like the panel grid. So I can select that panel grid. I can start to use some of these inputs. One of the things I kind of like here is, although it defaults to imperial, I can change this to meters. So the panel width, if I want these to be, say, 5 meters, I can type in M at the end, and it will acknowledge that this is actually changed, and this will go and make the adjustments to the panels. Now, I'll probably do something a little bit funky here because I haven't changed everything, but this is kind of cool. So I can use metric and imperial to drive that Dynamo script. And as mentioned, when we go to run that embedded graph, you'll see that this relates to Formit as opposed to Revit. So I think it was showing, yeah, that these are Formit nodes in here. So yeah, just something good point to raise there. Materials. So we work with bump maps and normal maps. If you've ever wanting to use a tool to create a normal map, you can do this in Photoshop, or you can potentially work with a bump map as well and a cutout. It is really simple. It is just point and shoot. So even with that panel work here, we've just got our paintbrush. You can work with the material samples. We do have numerous ones here out of the box, or you can path your own library. So I'm actually pathing to my more advanced 3ds Max library. And if I go to my concrete image database, I do have a lot of detail here. And I'm probably going to be pushing the limits of the tool because these are really high-res images. So maybe I might roll back to the earlier one. Okay, I'm just going to pause and jump back just so you see what's going on. So I can quickly just configure the horizontal vertical scales, the reflections, change the mapping as needed, and then just paint that onto the entire bit of geometry or the material face. There's also some mirror ones here as well. So painting onto the glass here, I use mirror glass, and there is kind of a rough HDRI background image here. So that's why you're seeing like a little reflection of some trees in a field in the background. Let's see. Here it is. So it's loaded up. Okay. So here I can go and go here and just paint that onto that material, and you can see here it's coming pretty clean. And if I want to make adjustments here, I can right click and go edit material, and I want to increase the horizontal vertical scale. So the width and the height of the panels were like 5x3, so I could go 5 by 3, and you can see it's adjusting in real time, and I can get some nice materials here. Other things, just so you can see what's happening with this, is you can also add more reflection, and as you crank this up, you'll be able to see some of this in the viewport here. Should be showing up. So this is the HDRI that's actually hidden in the background, reflecting here, but you can see it here showing in the preview. Oh, and also like in Revit, you can lock that as well. So here we have that background. Looks like we're on a beach somewhere. So that's just a little nice thing to show real-time reflections for those panels. The Revit connection, you can bring in your Revit family. So what I have up here is your content library. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be Revit files. You could consider looking at other files. This one, I have it mapped to numerous locations. I can also map it to the cloud. So I have Autodesk docs here, and I'm going to see if, yeah, so I can start to connect it into the bin 360 here. I haven't got this one mapped just yet, but what I have here within my libraries is the ability to drag and drop in Revit files. Now, some of them, depending on how they were made, will show in different ways. This one's from a company called Architree. So it looks really good in Revit, but when you bring it in Formit, it drops down to the course level details. If I want to bring in something like if I'm doing a kitchen, I can bring in this Fisher and Paykel oven, and that detail is available. Now, when it does clip like this, just go to perspective views. Okay, so I can't get too close, but you can see there's a lot of detail in this model. Now, it's not a family in the sense that it's going to have all the information like a typical RFA. It's a bit of geometry, but it's a way to reuse your, you can bring in the Revit families here, and these can be edited should you want to, but it doesn't have the same sort of depth as, say, a typical Revit family. So you can manipulate this if you want to, and I'll just pull that out. That can all be done, but it is just a bit of geometry, so it's not going to be a Revit family in the same sense as a Revit family. And when you go back into Revit, this will convert back into an RFA. We have.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Families that can be loaded in. So, yep.
Okay, sorry. There is a bit of a delay, so I'll just go slow. I'm wondering about that family where you're saying when you go back to Revit, it can be converted back to an RFA. But what if there's a modification? Because I'm trying to think this through.
No, so it doesn't convert back. It is reusing the Revit database, the Revit families for Formit, but when you bring it back into Revit, it doesn't convert back into an RFA.
Okay. So it's not really the same family that if you loaded the same family into Formit and into Revit, it wouldn't have the same
it just
characteristics.
converts.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably the thing to note here is you want to be modeling in Formit to a basic level of detail and then converting and developing in Revit. So just with Revit 2023, I'm just going to it's bringing through some data, but it's not going to bring through everything. It's not going to automatically convert everything just because of the way the two tools work. I'll just cover a couple of things before firing in Revit. For any of us architects who like to have things look a certain way, we do have visual styles in the tool. And this is just in Revit 2022, 2023, we have the ability to bring in the AXM file as an import. In 2023, you can link it. In 2022, you can import it. So what we have here in Revit, this is just the site. I won't go through the process of doing it all instantly. Just don't want to suck up too much time. But here I have a link of that Formit model coming into Revit. So it is an AXM file format, but it's linked like a CAD file format. There is the ability to send that back or edit it back in Formit if you want to. So you could go back and edit that. Here it's pinned. You can query some of the layers. And again, I've done a very basic job of creating layers here, but there is some information here. When you go to your visibility graphics and you go to imported categories, this information is available here as well. So if I want to turn off some of that site information, I can do that. And the furniture, I can do that as well. And now I have what would be the basic of a massing model to start working on. And you can see some levels. The levels haven't come through in this one. In the 2022 version, you can bring it through with the levels because it's 2023. It's a little bit new. It's not bringing through the levels in this instance, but in this part here, just to show you a quick demo where it does have some levels. And I think for anybody who's an Enscape user, we don't have a plugin for Enscape, but we do have Lumion. This is just a quick example of a Formit model linked into Lumion using one of their demo sites. And I can get some quite good results without having to do too much work. And again, it's all going to depend on the power of your PC, your graphics card, your CPU. A slightly larger model here. This one is looking at that city context. This was a tower in Singapore, a lot of foliage here. If you've ever used trees and planting in a model, it can be really taxing on the processing power of your PC. But this is just looking at linking that Formit model into Lumion and then showing it within context. The one that we have here for the levels, so this one here is the imported one in Revit 2022, and my levels do come through. It's just the new 2023 because it's linked. It's not doing that. A workflow that was of interest to one of my customers in this part of the world was having a connection between Formit and Revit to have different teams collaborating within a Revit model, but have the Formit team doing their own thing. So This one is the Formit environment where we have, say, someone doing a fit out of an apartment, interior designer, maybe they don't want to be using Revit, it's not really needed for what they're doing. They can be working in Formit with the Revit families. That design can be linked into the shell and core. So this is level 49 of an apartment building in Singapore. This can be linked in at level 49, and that can be part of the shell and core of the Revit model. So it's a collaborative design workflow. It's not a fully connected BIM workflow because the Formit data is Formit data and Revit data is Revit data, but that's one way you might want to consider using the tool. Here, back in Revit, it is a massing object, so typically if you want to go and convert these into Revit information, you would go and use the mass by face. It looks like here I might need to make some adjustments to this one to actually leverage that tool in the new 2023. So I might need to actually import it and then start to use that tool. So that's where it's at in terms of bringing it across into Revit and connecting back. But it is still bringing in a massing model as opposed to a detailed model. I'll come back to that in a second and show you some of the new stuff that you can do with the Spacemaker platform, which is really impressive. Other things you can do, the data doesn't have to be just necessarily used for Revit. You can use it as an FBX, OBJ, DAE, SAT. This instance, I'm actually bringing it into Spacemaker. I can bring that in. I can even locate it in its northings and eastings, so a little bit of tweaking here. I know that's not the coordinate system for Virginia, but I've moved it to the correct northings, eastings, and vertical Z placement. And we can bring it into the site, delete some of the information that's on the site, and then place that building in context. This is still very, very new. And for anybody wanting to use Spacemaker, it's available for a 30-day trial. It's not, it will be rolled in America soon. It's just not fully there yet. But with that Formit data, I can now start to assign it to a building type here. So that particular level could be a living unit, or I could go and put on a core, or I could add it to retail or residential. So there's a lot of really interesting things that's happening with the connection between our conceptual design Formit and our new cloud-hosted platform Spacemaker. There's analysis as well. So there's tools for doing noise analysis, daylight analysis. There's like a little microclimate tool here if you want to measure the heat within a courtyard in a hot part of the day. There's a view analysis one, which we'll get into in a second. There's even a wind wake analysis, and there's also a connection to send that data into Revit, which I'll try and show towards the end. Just how we're doing for time. I know I've probably gone a little bit long.
Officially 5 more minutes, but I think we usually are okay with staying on a little bit longer if you are.
Okay. Okay. So I'll show some of this because this is really interesting. Do we have any 3ds Max users on the call? Maybe not. The data. One. Okay. So also this data can go into 3ds Max, and you can reuse that data. So the materials from Formit here have come through, and I was just using the V-Ray engine just to put some trees in and start to add it to context. So I know most people using Revit will be using Enscape or Twinmotion or Lumion. I'm from the old school days. I still love 3ds Max, but you can still re-leverage that data. So just going to jump into this one and just show you how we can start to do a little bit more with the newer tools here, with the newer conceptual design tools. any last questions on Formit before I load up some stuff here?
I'm not sure if you were going to get to this, but it would be great to be able to see information brought into Revit, manipulated in Revit, pushed back into Formit, and that back and forth. That's what at least I've heard Formit's able to do. I'm not sure if you have time to do that, or if you have to import it instead of link it, or.
Yeah. So from what I've seen, like it needs to be imported. So whenever we bring out new tools, not everything is fine-tuned here. So if I just go and do a new project just using an architectural template, like the linking one doesn't allow me to do anything, but if I go to insert, and I know, we should not be importing, we should always link data. But here, if I go and just do the import of an AXM file, which is here, this one now starts to give me the option to bring in the levels from Formit, and I've done share coordinates. So I'll touch on something for share coordinates in a second in the new tool. Now when we go to our 3D view, it's actually brought in the levels that I created inside of Formit, whereas the previous one I had linked in, it just had the default Revit views here, and I could do all the things, maximize all of these out, and et cetera. Now with this particular one here, if I want to do more with it, so what you want to be doing is using the wall by face, but at the moment it's not giving me that option to select that massing object. So I'll just do a couple of things here where I will turn off the detail of the furniture. What you would need to do here, and I'm going to do just partial explode, and again this can sometimes be messy. Okay, that's done it. So the partial explode has broken that down a little bit, and I would then go and start to use wall by face, but it does not seem to be liking it. So you might need to go to full explode. No. So yeah, it isn't a perfect workflow, especially with certain types of geometry. Perhaps with this type of geometry, it might work a bit better, like just simple massing geometry. But the way it reads it, yeah, it's not liking that. So the connection of bringing the data into Formit, it's not going to be seamless in terms of having a model that's 100% ready to work in Revit. I'd keep it very, very basic, and that's always going to be the challenge, right? Because in Formit or a tool like SketchUp, we want to be able to model something like this, right? I mean, my goal was to have something like this as a conceptual design model. But to reuse this type of data inside of Revit, as you can see, it's not going to do it perfectly. You probably need to consider how detailed you're going to be modeling it and then bringing it in and using the wall by face. What I will show, though, is a much better tool for doing this. So I'm just going to close out this project, and just do a whole new architectural template here and just show you where we're going now with these new tools and what it actually converts to automatically without having to do the wall by mass by face. So here inside of the new Spacemaker tool, you can bring in different assets as needed. So I did actually bring in the Formit model here, and I do have here in the proposals that data available. So where is it on the site? Here it is. So I got to get used to my different keys for this tool. You actually have to use the shift key and the right click button to pan as opposed to the mouse. But yeah, here's my Formit model inside of Spacemaker, and you can see how it has come into the platform. So there's some things you can start to do with this. Again, this is very early days, but you could start to customize these elements. Now, this might be a little bit too detailed for Spacemaker, but I can use that information, and I could potentially manipulate it if I wanted to. Now, I won't do that. I want to just show some of the newer tools. So I've got a new proposal here to create a new proposal plus. With this new proposal, when I fire that up, it just gives me a clean site here. Some of the things I've done in the background under the layers here is you can go to the edit tool and set up more intelligent information for your site constraints. So there's things like bringing in your own terrain should you want to. So here, this is the OSM data, and again, I don't know how hilly this part of the site is, but maybe it's not as hilly as that. Like OSM data is like the DEM data. You can bring in your own terrain file. The other workaround that I've been looking at is exporting the terrain as an OBJ and then aligning them with some proper site topography inside of 3ds Max, should you want to do that. Other things you can do is you can set up your existing buildings. So here's our existing buildings. Oh, this one, sorry, is defaulted to surrounding buildings. There's a bit more information here. Like you can start to drive some of the tools here to configure that existing building information. You can add roads. So if I want to go and do West Main Street here, just go into 2D. This would be for setting up tools for doing the noise analysis. So I'll just draw a basic line down here for West Main Street, hit return, and now I can give it a name. So, and the speed limit, I don't know, 31 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour. And then daily traffic, maybe there's 2,000 vehicles that will go down there. And then we also can say there's a construction site going on, so we're going to be looking at 50% heavy traffic. All of that can be set up, and this could impact maybe the acoustics that you want to specify. Like it could, for the facade of that building, you might need triple glazing if it's a library or something. So all of this can be used, and you can apply those changes once you finish them all. There's buildable area, which we can have, and I've also set up a site limit here. There is other simple things like you could do for vegetation or view to an area, and I'll do view to an area set up here. So maybe down here there's like a monument. One of the key things when I was designing in London was you would always be designing so the buildings had views to St. Paul's. So maybe there's a particular building here which you have to maintain a view to. I can go and set that up as a view to an area. Could be a park, could be water, you can color code it. This can basically help with the AI part of this tool for designing building options on the site. So there's numerous things you can do here. I won't better get into them all right now, but it's pretty powerful. I will apply the changes, and I'm just going to do it to the current scenario. So roads and rails, view to area, apply, or I could do it as a whole new scenario. So maybe you're doing a university campus and you're doing several different options, or several different people are working on that project. You can all collaborate in this as well. So you can see here, this is me working on this proposal, but I can invite other people to be working on proposals. Now, my internet's working a bit better now, but you can see here we have some more info for our setup of our site. Our main street for noise analysis with the road marker, our view to an area, and then our site limits here. Now, simple tools here for starting to design your buildings, and there's even a parking tool. The AI component, though, is under Explore here on the right, and this is where the artificial intelligence component of Spacemaker comes into play. So this will allow you to do height studies, site studies. And what I want to do for the site study is leverage all these different layout types and see what will give me the most amount of units on the site. So at the moment, this is fixed, but maybe I want it varied. I want a variety of stories, so maybe 3 to 4 to 8. And then you could set it up so they're maximized for daylight or sunlight or views. So I'm going to choose views because I want to see how many of my apartments or hotel rooms for this particular site are going to get views to that particular monument that we created. So I'll go generate, and this will now go and start to calculate all the different options based on the criteria that we set. So the ratio of different heights, the views to that monument, and this will give us usually within a minute it will do a number of results. So it's got 13 different options here. We can also filter here by what we want to see in terms of the ratios, number of buildings. Maybe I'm a developer, I want to get in the most amount of buildings here. So you can see for this one we're getting a certain amount of square footage for these different options. We can choose the one that is going to give us the most bang for buck, or as an architect, I might want to choose something a bit more interesting. So I might like this one, for example. I can, of course, make these my favorites. I can also use as input, or I can add it to the proposal list. I'm going to add it to my proposal list. And now I have a new design generated for me on the site. So when I go back to the design tool, and it will flip back into 3D, we're going to see more information about the building. So based on the criteria that we set, all of these spaces should have views. So when we look at the Analyze tool, we have some really fast tools to do analysis for sun, for daylight, for noise, and for views. There's also like a little microclimate one here as well. This one here is for wind. This one isn't too bad. It's going to do it in 30 minutes. So if you've ever done computational fluid dynamics, sometimes that could take days. This is going to be doing it in 30 minutes, incredibly fast. If you do want to know more on this, we have more data about how we do the analysis for these tools. So you can check that out on our Spacemaker analysis site, which is here. So we have a lot of information about how we actually calculate all of this. This one, you'll see that it's already gone and done the sun calculations, and some of our teams are providing little helpful updates here on how you can run this and get the results, and then bring in your own assets. You'll see here there are certain parts of the building that is only getting maybe 1 to 2 hours, so maybe we need to rethink the light coming into these units, or it might be more admin that we'd be putting down in those parts. Here again, this is something to consider, a gloomy courtyard or ground floor building. So all of this can be calculated incredibly fast. And then the view one, which we actually set this up for. So again, this one is looking at the distance. So we've got 328 feet from some of these units here. Now, we can click on inspecting that and actually see where those views are going. So these ones maybe aren't that great, but this one is giving us, quite a lot of views. And the more focal areas that we want to set up, like to parks or to water, it will start to give us more feedback here. So there's some really cool tools that we have that you can start to use to do analysis of your building. back to design, the connection into Revit, and I know I, tried to show Formit working there, but it doesn't necessarily work with the detailed model that I have. With this one, you can do a lot more. One thing I want to do before taking this into Revit is I want to select the entire building unit here. So for this one here, I'm just going to focus on one for now. I want to make some adjustments here. So this is the floor-to-floor height, 9.8 feet. The width is 40. Maybe we want to drop that down to say 30. We can do that and it'll instantly do that. We can also look at the section length. So this is the section length of how it's breaking up each one of the units. So that's at 52 feet. We could reduce that, and you can see it's starting to break up the units a little bit more here. So I don't know, maybe 20 feet is a little bit tight. So I'll just leave that at 40. You can do that, and you're getting real-time feedback on how that's working. I did set it to mixed, so I'll just leave that as is. That was part of the Explore tool for AI. I can also manage how I want this to be. So it could be commercial. It will show up as being purple or residential. We can also convert this to a polygon building. Once we have these ones, we can do a little bit more with it. We can also go into the back end of managing functions. Just want to quickly go here. Maybe it's not going to work with these ones. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple quick things. The other tools you can use to do the layouts of the buildings is these ones up here. So you've got a polygon tool. So it's just grabbing the vertices on the edge of a tool to do the layout. You've got auto buildings, and you've got division lines and zones. So I'll do just this one. This is just the point and shoot. And as I go through and do things like this, it will make adjustments. There is with this, do it this one. Okay, it's not going to do it this one or that one. All right, I'm going to do the auto building tool here. So with the auto building tool, no, it is not liking me today. Okay, let me just try one more. Okay. So let me just try something a little bit different here, and I'll just drop into another project just to show this working, because it might have been the way I've just set this up. So here I have an example I did just recently for Auckland, New Zealand, when I was over there, and we picked a certain location down by the water. Again, it was OSM data, but we're able to get some okay results with that data. You can actually flatten this out. It is, quite hilly as how it's been shown here. But what I want to do is just show you with this, using the auto building tool, is how to convert this into units. So this one here, for example, I want to make it into units like this one. So using these tools, I can go here and go to set custom unit mix, and this will start now to look at the units distribution. So 40 square meters is way too small. We want to be a bit more generous, so maybe I want 40% of 1-bed units, 2-bed units, maybe 0 there, 0 there, and this could be 60 for, say, 3-bed units. I'll go generate that, and this will now go and break that down into ratios. So you can see I'm getting 24 units on this 7-8 story tower, and here's the ratio that it's giving to me. With that, I can also go to display, so it will color code the unit sizes, and with those units, I can go to the floor plan. And when you go to select these, it will tell you for each bay we have here, different types of layouts. Again, this is still early days, but you can choose core A's or core B's, and this will start to lay them out for you. So there's these nice little tools here, which will very quickly give you some layouts. Now, it doesn't work on corner apartments at the moment, but I can quickly do that, and this is doing it, via floor by floor as needed, or you could do it via the whole block, like what I did here. And of course, if you want to be more detailed about this, here I can convert this particular element to a polygon building, and if I'm wanting to be a bit more creative, maybe get into a Bjarke Ingels type style, I can start to do interesting things with geometry and have them sort of hover around in bits and pieces. So there's all these interesting things you can start to do with that, and I can get into more detail here by pushing and pulling the geometry around. So this is a great tool. Again, it doesn't go into as much detail as Formit, but using the massing information here, it will go into Revit in a lot more of a cleaner way. So I just wanted to show that tool. I'm going to jump back to the project we have here, just with the buildings that we have. And internet's still okay. What's my bonus? There we go. Okay, so I've got a simple massing object here. I won't go into everything. I just want to show how this looks like in Revit. So what I'm going to do now with this design is send to Revit, and again, this is beta technology. So I hit send to Revit, then I go back to Revit, and I go fetch, and because okay, with a new version. Okay, all right, sorry, I'll just try and do this very, very quickly. It's always good doing live demos. Okay. Let me just see if I can fire up one that I've done before. And do I have one recently? No. Okay. So just while that's doing it, I'll just jump into another model which has a little bit more detail in it, and I will do my best to grab a smaller model so it doesn't take too much time when doing it live. So I think I did one here in Christchurch, New Zealand, when I was having a look around over there, and this is actually a much smaller site. Again, using the tools to do the AI for the layout, and for this particular one, we've got some more detail in our apartment units. So let's see. Okay. All right, I'm going to see if it just works anyway. If not, we may have to do this as another session. But basically, with this tool, you can fetch that information and it will open up. I will see if I can open up one that I have done for the team in Singapore, and I can't find it, then I may have to come back to it. I may have to come back to that one. It looks like my thing isn't downloading. Okay, so basically what will happen is when this data comes through into Revit, what it will do is it automatically grabs all those faces, all those levels, it adds walls automatically. It will add the exterior walls, it will add the floors, it will add the roofs, it will add the interior walls, it will map them to whatever you've set up in your Revit template. And for anybody who has ever struggled to get their heads around shared coordinates, this will do shared coordinates for you. So it will set up your survey and project base point. Just seems like my fingers are updating here. So this is something that is going to make our lives as designers a lot easier, because we're going to have a conceptual design tool that has AI for doing different options for the site. It's going to be able to allow you to manipulate it in a lot more detail. At the moment, it's working more in LOD 100. And it's going to connect into Revit with detailed information for you to develop your information modeling project. So a lot is happening here, and you can start to use this for a trial, and we will eventually be rolling it out in your area. We just don't have the ETAs on that yet. So I'll just pause for questions on that one.
So you may not know the answer to this, but is it something that's going to be included in our AEC collections, or is it going to be separate?
I do not know. I think at the moment it is sold separately, but I have no idea about what's happening with the future of that. I'm merely a minion in
Right. Well, we appreciate all of the work you've put into preparing this presentation for us. Thank you.
My pleasure. And yeah, if anybody does have any questions or wants to drop me a note, my email address is here. So happy to share anything or answer any questions going forward.